Welcome. So today we're going to do something kind of a little different because we usually have older stuff and stuff that probably isn't quite as fast or stuff that doesn't have quite as big a brake rotor, considering this is a Spitfire brake rotor. So we've got a BMW M2 2021.
Sorry.
That's all right. You can tell what I know. So this is a little out of the norm, but we're going to do some stuff, put a transponder on it. So I'm going to grab the camera, and then there's someone who's much more of an expert on this stuff than I am, and we're going to let them talk through what we're doing. All right, so I don't know a lot about these, so why don't you just walk through, what is this, what does it do?
Sure.
What's the purpose? Yep.
In motorsports, you generally like to know how fast you're going, and the way most tracks do this is using what's called a transponder. And this is just a device that induces a current across a wire buried under the track, which is connected to a computer from whoever the organizing event is to see how fast people are going, right? They measure when you cross once and time it until you cross again. They can also use this in races to figure out who crossed the line first, but generally they'll do a photo finish as well just to back that up. And usually they also have people writing it down on a clipboard the old-fashioned way. This company, MyLaps, used to be called AMB, makes these transponders. They used to make two types, a hardwired and a battery style, and they used to be good forever. You'd mount it and it would last until the device died. They've just switched it with a subscription model. You can buy 1 year, 3 year, or unlimited. Which is a little ridiculous for a thing that's just shooting a code onto a wire, but it is what it is. And so we're mounting this up on this M2 because we're going to do time trials with NASA Mid-Atlantic. And as part of doing time trials, you need to have a way to measure your time. And time trials, think of it like qualifying as just the fastest lap wins. It's a great way to get your car that you also drive to the grocery store on track without having to go nuts and put in a full cage. It's kind of that evolutionary step between your HPDE driver school events and racing itself. Or for someone like me who retired from racing when you had kids, it's a great way to go back as your kids get older and don't want to talk to you anymore.
Nice. All right, let's check this thing out. In the box, what does it come with? So it's all battery powered and Bluetooth.
Yeah, so these are battery powered and Bluetooth. They had a whole blinking code that tells you how many more days of racing you have left. We've covered up the transponder number. Each one has a unique number. And these new kits come with a charging cradle that has the code for what the blinks mean. So when it's plugged in via USB, that'll tell you that it's charging, or battery is full, or what else is going on. You connect these via Bluetooth to your phone for the initial pairing. And it's just your typical micro USB, so you can charge this from your cigarette lighter in the car if you need to. But the goal would be you charge this up and it's good for 4 days, which should get you through your Friday test and tune, into Saturday, into Sunday, and then back home again. They come with a mounting kit, and the mounting kit is a bit of a universal one where it's got a little notch that the battery or the transponder slips into, slides over this pin in the top, and then you can run a cotter pin through it. And that's where you mount it in. Now, when you mount this, you need this bottom red piece to have a clear view straight down to the track. And it should be mounted such that it's perpendicular to the track, which gives you the best chance of the signal being picked up. The last thing you want to do is have your best lap go across the track, but it didn't pick up the signal and you didn't get credit for it. Or worse, you repeatedly don't get credit for it and they black flag you and make you come in to explain why your transponder's not working, and you're losing out on that track time that you rented out on. So the way the mount works is if you're on a motorcycle or something with a tube, you can actually just run zip ties through this thing straight through there, mount it around the tube and it'll deform. Or in a car, there's two little screw holes we can use, or you can drill these tabs as well. The trickiest spot or part is finding a place where you can easily get to manipulate this on and off at this steep angle, get the pin in and out, and take it out to charge before and after each event without having to jack up your car or take a wheel off or things like that. In the past, these were a lot smaller when they didn't have the subscription. They're easier to fit in places. People would also sometimes just zip tie them to the front of their car. That's also a great way to lose these, which is why we're going to mount this today with the mounting bracket, because we don't want this flying off and then now we've lost our 1 year subscription on this thing and we don't get the money back. So we're going to try to find a spot to mount this under the car that's free of damage inducing areas, right? Like we don't want gravel throwing on it. We don't want a wheel to come in and rub against it or damage it in some way. But it's also easy enough to access that we can walk up to the car and take it on and off. So we might have to look around a little bit, but we'll find out where that's going to be.
All right, so our task is to find a good spot to mount that transponder. Now we've taken the front right-hand wheel off. So we looked at a couple options.
The name of the car right into the fender liner.
I can get that, I bet. Yeah.
case you're working on the car and forget what you're working on.
I thought that's what we used to do back in the day with our Chevrolets, and we'd put it across the windshield. You know?
Oh, that's right. That's what this one is. Yeah.
All right, so for mounting the transponder, we got the front passenger wheel off, trying to look at some options here.
So we found a couple bolts that might work. The trick with these is you want a space that's out of the way of the wheel when it turns in, but also has a clear view pointed straight down. And in looking at a couple of these bolts we might be able to reuse, again, going through the pre-drilled holes in the brackets, these could be good spots for that. But when we start looking at what's below, this transponder is going to be shooting through pieces of metal, strut bar. It's not going to have a clear view of the ground, and you're not going to have a good time at the track doing that.
Yeah, and any further out, so if you put it further out into the plastic here, you run the risk of the wheel hitting it. So you'd really have to catch it. Not to mention, even if we turn the wheel on the lift and it looks great, when you're turning under suspension load and the geometry is a little different.
Yep.
I mean, everything's so, the wheels are so, the tires, I guess, and the wheels are so big and wide, and you know, there's just not a lot of clearance for a lot of that stuff. So
we thought this might be a good spot, but if you shoot straight up from the bottom, you'll see that you can barely see the transponder. It's hidden behind the sway bar link, or if we look at this alternative location, it's shooting straight through this wishbone. And while there may be some visible red from below, the majority of this is blocked by this wishbone, which would keep you from having a reliable signal shooting down to the track. This is going to get you black flags coming in saying, "What's wrong with your transponder, man?"
I want to go all Con Air on them. I've disabled my transponder. Did they do that in Con Air?
Yeah, I think they did, because they were trying to squawk hijack.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to be in the front.
You're right. Yeah,
Right,
you want it in the front if you're doing positional racing, where you want your time to show up before another car. So if you was racing someone for position in a true race format, and their transponder crossed the line 6 feet before yours did, well, they're probably going to say that that guy won. But in time trials, it doesn't matter. You just want your elapsed time from crossing it to crossing it. As long as it's in the same spot, you're going to get that same time. And when you're on the track doing time trials, you always drive as hard as you can past the start-finish line, 20, 30 feet at least before you would lift off. So it doesn't matter for us that it's in the front or the back. So looking in the back, there's at least one spot that seemed promising.
So there's a bolt right there.
Bolt right up here that we thought we could attach to.
So if you hold that, let me look from the bottom. I see it pretty clearly.
So you have a pretty good shot, clear as day. The only thing that concerns me about this spot is I don't remember being able to reach my whole hand in under the fender when this car was on the ground. And it feels like that's going to compress up, and we may have some dynamic loading of the tire pushing in against this. Additionally, we mentioned we've got to be able to pull this pin out and pry this thing off the mount so we can recharge the battery. Not sure we're going to be able to do that if this is on the ground. That's something we might want to test.
I would agree. So your tire to fender well clearance and your tire to the inner tub clearance is just too tight.
Yep. And again.
All right, so after that kind of spot in the back wheel well didn't quite work, we started looking underneath the car for other alternatives, knowing that we had a few spots that would work in a pinch, but we were still trying to find something a little better. And I think we might have stumbled upon something that's probably going to work for us. So
we got two spots down here that might work out. So we're trying to find some place, again, up off the ground, so it's not going to get brushed or bumped by wheels or rocks or things we cross over, but also easy to get to. So looking right here, there's a nice little piece of plastic. The nice part about this is if we rig up a mount of this, we're only spending another 30 bucks to buy a replacement part, or somebody will drive one of these off the road one day and we'll get it at a junkyard. But we might be able to mount this clean up in here, which gives us a nice reach under to get to this part and grab it. Now the only challenge on this side is this piece of plastic doesn't go up very high, and there's this structural box right up on top of this. This is a part of a drain inside of the trunk. So that might not be the best spot, but maybe we can look on the other side. If we come down over here, we've got a nice large panel to mount to that's pretty well away from the tire as far as throwing junk up in there, and we can even mount it up high. The way they tell you to mount these transponders is the top of the transponder needs to be close, 2 feet or less from the ground as you drive over it, and this will get that in here. And actually in this case, you know, if we mount it to this one, I bet you we can pull this whole piece of plastic out and do it on the workbench. Just a couple bolts here. Take that off. So we'll just take these 8mm screws off. Just a handful of them. Gotta be gentle. These are plastic into plastic, generally with a metal clip that you're screwing into. This is one of those plastic nuts on a metal stud welded into the frame.
There's also 2 small screws on the wheel well liner. They're pretty easy to remove, just make sure you use a small shallow ratchet.
Yeah, so we've got all our nuts out. We got to pull down off that one stud we showed you, and then the whole piece just slides out.
Easy.
These little metal clips in the back are what we were screwing into through the other layers. You can actually buy buckets of these from Pelican Parts and other shops online, because these generally get lost.
So this is my normal lesson of never throw anything away, and my vindication when I go to my junk bin and I find these brackets, which I don't even know what they're from. Maybe a stereo install? I don't know. But
actually, they do look like a GM stereo, right? Because those pins would center
locate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So never throw anything out. And then you had these J-clips and
J-clips and matching bolts from our bag of stuff from an E46 BMW. Plenty of nice goodies in here. Lots of caged bolts with a caged nut on them. I don't even know how you make that, because you can't remove that. We found some that were small enough. So they have a washer, they've got a nice head on them, and they're small enough to fit into the gap on our bracket, and they'll sit low enough that they don't interfere with insertion or removal of the transponder.
Perfect. So,
but these holes are too far apart, so we've marked a hole here.
And shovel, you can see there it is.
We'll land on our center. Okay.
There you go. And I guess that's important to point out. I mean, I highly doubt anyone watching this is going to go, oh, I just happen to have those exact same parts. So it is, go find what you have, or you can go to the hardware store and get something equivalent. But these pieces, you can see, we ground off these nubs and one of the edges to kind of give a straight piece like that, which allowed the J-clip to go. You could just do this with a nut and bolt. You don't have to use the J-clips, but they're nice. You could put the J-clips in the plastic if you're willing to drill a big enough hole, and you'd actually have to do 2, one to put it in, one to slide, and one for the
You could probably back the J-clip behind the plastic, and that would be good enough.
Probably do that as well, yeah.
I mean, what we're looking for is this isn't a structural piece of the car. It just has to not fall off.
Yeah. The thing we liked about this, by the way, was that it, well, I guess this one, it does give a little more structural rigidity to that plastic.
So we've got a flappy piece here, but having this bolted behind it will help reinforce it in place.
Yeah, so perfect.
So what we've done is we've rigged up our stand so that it's sitting at the same angle as on the car, which happened to be a 10-degree lift from front to back, front being on this side. And we've used a level to level up the bracket and mark where we want our 2 holes to go. We're going to end up with the transponder just a couple inches up off the bottom to help deflect anything that might come up to hit it, but not so far to the top that you can't reach under the car and grab this thing. And if you notice as well, this also places it well away from the muffler and exhaust system. Okay. All right, and then we can use a utility knife to clean that little pull out.
Now, when we went to test fit the transponder, we found out the heads on these screws were a little bit too tall, and that actually prevented the transponder from seating fully in the mount. So we're going to have to go back to the drawing board with some different screws, and of course we'll check to make sure that that is indeed the case. Right,
so we did the old transfer trick. We were running into trouble getting that mounted on, so we sharpied up the top of a screw, and as you can see, they hit in 2 places. So our screw heads here, find a nice white background for you, we're just a little too tall. What we found instead is just a smaller headed screw. See how that's maybe 3 millimeters shorter. Still a pan head, still has an integrated washer. Slightly different thread, but it'll work on this J-clip because these are just little machines that bend the tabs over, and that's that.
Cool. Is it still a German screw though, or at least off of BMW?
There are Phillips screwdriver screws in BMWs. These are in fact from the sun visor for an E46.
Okay.
So that's like a mid-2000s 3 Series.
I mean, at least you're not putting like a Ford screw in there.
Well, you know, Ford and BMW were the only family-owned brands for a long time, so I think Ford would work as well, as long as it's not Chevrolet.
Did you get it?
Let's see if we can get the pen through. Ta-da.
Nice.
So now we have our firmly mounted. We've got our nice backing plate. You can see the screw heads come straight through. We can't pull it out. And this backing will ensure that we're not going to stress the plastic and pull it in some way.
I mean, if anything, we're benefiting the torsional rigidity of the chassis.
Yeah, now we are upsetting the corner weighting of the
corner
car.
weighting might
It's
be
going to be
upset.
slightly off. BMWs are known
For that,
for
we'll make
perfect
up for it.
50-50.
Yeah.
So what will happen there is the driver will have to eat a little more the morning of to get that weight back to the front and then lean to the right a little.
Perfect. As they say, reinstallation is the reverse of removal. Just be sure not to over-tighten and break anything.
So as you can see, we have a nice firmly mounted transponder here, pointed straight down. This will be easy to reach under from the back of the car to pull in and out. This nice and firm. These are designed to work with a fair amount of vibration and bumping. No track is perfectly level, and if you've ever been on the track, your teeth are always pounding against each other. But this will work just fine. And the best part is, a couple bucks, we can get a new one of these parts. You never know we did anything to this car. Get our hand under here, we pop the pin out, pull the transponder off.
Excellent.
And installation is reverse of removal. Pops in really nice. A little tricky to get the pin in since you can't see it, but once you get it in there, it's in. You're good to go.